Hello, Premier Scott Moe, Health Minister Paul Merriman, and MLA for Yorkton Greg Ottenbreit. I am directing this video to all of you as I have heard from my brother, who works for the Saskatchewan Health Authority, that government employees in Saskatchewan, such as himself, have to get vaccinated or pay out of their own pocket for a COVID-19 test. A test that could cost from $90 to $350 and has to be taken every week. Even though I live in Manitoba, I just wanted to reach out to you and add my voice of concern over this issue and try to share my perspective as to why people like my brother, myself, or any Canadian citizen not wanting to get vaccinated should not be the target of such efforts, and maybe even offer a possible alternative that could benefit everyone. For the last 9 months, Canadians have been hearing that the vaccines are, quote, safe and effective, unquote. I disagree. While I may be someone who does not choose to take any vaccines and would prefer to try other options for my health, if at all possible, I can still appreciate that for some, an option of a vaccine may be preferred. So, for their sakes, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to an option of a vaccine, but not the way these vaccines have been introduced and pushed. There is a reason vaccines normally take years to be approved, and I don't see why these should have been treated any differently. Because now, even though they have received emergency use authorization, there has not been enough time to gather the necessary data needed to truly know how safe and effective they are. So, in a sense, the whole public has become the test subjects. How are the subjects doing? Well, you can go to a website called VAERSanalysis.info to see data comparing the COVID-19 vaccines to all other vaccines. Here are some numbers for the COVID-19 vaccines. 778,685 adverse reactions, 17,618 life-threatening events, 23,712 permanent disabilities, and 16,310 deaths. Please check out the website for yourself to see all of the data and confirm if this is correct. I think it is important to note that most of the numbers are higher for the COVID-19 vaccines tracked since December 2020 compared to all other vaccines tracked since 1990. And I have read and heard that the numbers from VAERS may only represent 1 to 10% of the actual numbers. If that is true, the real numbers could be frighteningly higher. If that is not the case, these numbers are still concerning, and this is just for roughly 10 months of use. What will be the long-term effects? Only time will tell, but based on this data, even if a majority of those vaccinated don't seem to be affected, people are being affected by the vaccines, and I cannot see how you and all other government and health officials can keep saying the vaccines are safe. And effective? Well, it's quite surprising to me that those who have gotten sick and recovered from COVID-19 and now have natural immunity are still told that they must get the vaccine. Studies have shown that those infected with the 1918 flu still had immunity some 90 years later, while those infected with the SARS-CoV-1 virus back in 2002 to 2004 still seem to be showing immunity some 18 years later. How can you not recognize natural immunity with such a track record from other viruses, and yet you have vaccines that have only been in use for 9 to 10 months, and you might say that that immunity is better? What's worse, not only can vaccinated people still get COVID-19 and spread it, how that can be called immunization is beyond me. It looks like a booster is in order, as efficacy seems to be waning 4 to 6 months after vaccination. Effective? I'm sorry, I'm not quite convinced, and I have no desire to get special privileges for something that basically you'll have to have an expiration date for. So, where does this leave us? Am I just saying I don't want to take an experimental vaccine and there's no other option? Not at all. This last part I want to share with you is what I would consider exciting news, something that could benefit everyone. You can find the data from ourworldindata.org. While we and many other nations push vaccines as the only way out of this pandemic, I'd like to draw your attention to a country that is in stark contrast to us, India. While we move past 70% of our population fully vaccinated, India is at a shockingly low 19%. You'd think they would be in terrible trouble with horrible case numbers and a high death rate. But you'd be mistaken. Even right now, while we are in a bit of an upswing, India, with a population roughly 36 times greater than our population in an even smaller landmass, is lower than us in both categories and actually going down. What? Does that not surprise you? It does me. And yet, no mention of it in the news. But there should be. We should investigate what they are doing, or maybe you have looked at it, but you don't like what you find. Well, I'm sorry, but that doesn't negate what's going on. They don't have high vaccine numbers to credit for a turnaround from their wave in April to June, so what did they do? I would recommend you watch a video by Dr. John Campbell for a pretty good explanation. You can get to that video in the top right of this screen or by the link in the description. In a nutshell, their procedure was something that I would say we are sorely lacking in. Treatment. More importantly, early treatment. A home kit with an assortment of vitamins and drugs, and of special interest, the use of a particular drug that over here is almost like a curse word. That drug is, and I'm not sure if I'm even allowed to say it out loud, so I'll show it. Even YouTube's guidelines has a whole section about COVID-19 medical misinformation, where you are not allowed to make certain claims about. I find it disturbing that a product that is one of the safest drugs in the world has over 3.5 billion doses given to humans, and less than 100 deaths is basically on a blacklist. And yet, it is part of a home kit that, as far as we know, some parts of India are finding tremendous benefit from. Now, I'm not a doctor or a medical professional of any kind with experience in the use of, so any thoughts on this subject are just my opinion. But at the very least, I bring this up to point out that when one speaks of and can get banned on YouTube, and when doctors or nurses over here dare to use it and possibly get fired, why is that kind of action okay? Let's say, though, that isn't effective. It's not the only drug that may have benefits as a preventative or treatment for COVID-19. There are a number of doctors in the U.S. that have worked out protocols for treating people. I could point you to Dr. Peter McCullough, a highly respected cardiologist from Dallas, Texas. You can find an interview with him up here in the corner or from the link in the description that you may find has helpful information. Also, Dr. Pierre Corey and Dr. Paul Merrick are part of a group called the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance. They have protocols for COVID-19, and I'm sure would be happy to help anyone seeking more information. You can find their website at covid19criticalcare.com. My point in sharing these is that even if vaccines are effective, people are still getting sick. And yet, treatment for those who get infected with COVID-19 hasn't changed in over a year and a half, which, as far as I know, if someone tests positive, they basically have to go home, take Tylenol for any discomfort, and go back to the hospital if they get worse. I'm sorry, but that is not treatment. Has your treatment protocol changed for someone once they are in the hospital? I saw a CBC video with an interview of a doctor from Alberta where he had made a tweet that said, "Despite our resources and technology, we can do little but support our patients and their families through the process, waiting for them to heal." That is the real shame. That is what I want to challenge you about. Here you are condemning people for not taking an experimental vaccine, trying to shame, guilt, bribe, or coerce them into taking vaccines you say are the answer. But how does that help the vaccinated or unvaccinated if/when they get sick? Do you not see how things could be improved by considering early treatment protocols from others who have experience in this? Wouldn't it be good if you could keep people out of the hospital in the first place? Maybe be able to have an option for employees of trying a drug that might work as a prophylactic. I know you say that's what the vaccines are doing, trying to keep people from getting sick or ending up in the hospital. Well, if they are working, they aren't perfect, and you can't tell a vaccinated person when they wind up in a hospital, "Sorry, the vaccine didn't work, but here, roll up your sleeve and take another jab." Vaccines aren't treatment. It's time you seriously reconsidered your strategy for how to live with this virus. If you aren't aware of what's happening in India, of what doctors like McCullough, Corey, and Merrick are doing, well, now you know. Really, what I am sharing, I hope, is exciting news, because if it's possible for our country and others to follow India's example and see similar results, isn't that a good thing? Maybe no more reason for lockdowns, for wearing masks everywhere, for creating two classes of citizens, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. No more fear-mongering when the virus can possibly be better prevented or treated. This is what I want to leave you with. I hope you will seriously consider what I have shared and not continue to pursue strategies that not only harm the livelihoods of the unvaccinated, but ultimately end up hurting everyone. Thank you for your time.